Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Kramer, Director of Detroit Homecoming.
Good morning, and thank you for being on time this morning and grabbing a cup of coffee to hear our kickoff speaker. Mike Duggan is Detroit's 75th mayor. He took office in 2014, and he was a speaker at our very first Detroit Homecoming. Not only that, he has been a big supporter of Homecoming from day one. There are so many things I could say about the mayor. His bio is in the program book. You read about him all the time. But this is maybe most appropriate for this audience. In any given year of Detroit Homecoming, he gets the highest marks of any homecoming speaker. Need I say more? Please welcome Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan.
Well, good morning. It's quite a change from when Mary Kramer started this in 2014. At the time, in September of 2014, the city of Detroit was still in bankruptcy. And how far we come really hit home for me in my last meeting at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mayors from across the country get together and talk about their shared problems. And I went to my first Conference of Mayors meeting in 2014 where mayors from Chicago and Baltimore and Dallas and LA were there. And I talked about my problems. I said, well, the city of Detroit's in bankruptcy. The ambulances don't show up for an hour after you call them. More than half the street lights in the city are out. And everybody listened politely, but the conversation went on because no other city could relate to our problems. They weren't dealing with those issues, and it really hit me hard how far behind we were. This last time I go to the meeting, and we are talking about how do we get the workers back to the downtown office buildings? How do we get the worker shortages at all of the business, get folks trained and get them back to work? And what do we do about affordable housing and the rising housing prices for our staff? And I'm now in the middle of these conversations. The problems of Detroit are the problems of other big cities in America. We have very real problems, but it is remarkable how far we have come. And if you get a chance to come through and see some of the things in the city, you'll see this. And when Mary Kramer started this, it was really kind of an act of charity. It was like, Detroit's in bad shape. There are a lot of folks who left the city and made good. Can't you come back and help a little bit? And now, when you look at where we are, I think you'll find it very different. There's no greater illustration of what's different than what's going on at the train station. And I'll just tell you a little bit about it because I think it captures where we've gone and also captures how central the homecoming has been in many aspects of Detroit's recovery. But the Michigan train station, you all know how much it has meant, but it closed in 1980, been sitting vacant for 40 years. In 2009, Detroit City Council voted to demolish it. It couldn't possibly be saved. The owner at the time didn't have any money, and so they ignored the city council's order. The Maroons ultimately bought it, not for the train station itself, but for all of the railroad lines behind it. They're in the transportation business. I don't think they actually gave any thought to the building. But to me, it symbolized hopelessness. Nobody could imagine that train station being reopened. And so in the course of the mayoral campaign in 2013, I ran against a very popular sheriff by the name of Benny Napoleon, and his #1 financial supporter was Matty Maroon, who didn't want me as the mayor, wanted my opponent. But his son Matthew came to see me the first month, wanting to know, are there any bad feelings? And I said, no, there's no bad feelings, but there is going to be one thing you need to do. And he said, what's that? I said, I want you to put windows in the train station. And he said, what? I said, I'm telling you, I will be glad to work with you on all fronts, but you're going to do one thing. You're going to put windows in the train station. I think that train station has enormous beauty. People have gotten to thinking about it in a certain way. If you put the windows in, it'll change it. He came back a couple weeks later and said, it's going to be $1 million. And we ended up working on a deal for something else he wanted. And the Maroons agreed, with no prospects at all, to put windows in the train station. I was so excited I took the city council member, Raquel Castaneda Lopez, from that area. I took her out there. I said, the Maroons are going to put windows in the train station. She said, why would you do that? I said, because it can come back. She says, that's ridiculous. The city council member from Southwest Detroit voted against the Maroon deal to put windows in the train station because she thought it was hopeless. And of course, the media beating I took at the time, lipstick on a pig, was actually used as a description. And then a really interesting thing happened. They started putting in the windows, and the town was electrified. And you could see again what used to be there. And there started to be a lot of excitement. And my friend Stephen Henderson, many of you know, longtime editor for the Free Press, he takes me to lunch one day, and he said, I had a buddy come in from out of town. I wanted to go around and see Detroit. He said, I picked him up at the airport, I'm taking him back, and he said, let's go by the train station. And Stephen said, great, drove him by. He said, his friend said, you put windows in it, you ruined it. And he said, I had no idea how many people were visiting Detroit to see the ruins, the decayed auto plants and the like. And what he was seeing now was another building with windows in it. He said, you're doing the right thing. People have gotten so used to thinking of Detroit as a decaying city, they can't imagine anything else. Well, Matthew gets the windows in the trade station, and he starts to get some phone calls of some interest. He's now somewhat less skeptical of this whole thing. And Mary Kramer comes to me, and you guys went to the dinner last night, but they do a dinner somewhere. She said, where should we do the dinner this year? I said, there's only one place to do the dinner. So I said, inside the trade station. And she said, you got to be kidding. I said, no, I mean, they seal it up with windows. How hard could it be to put some tables in? So she went over and saw Matthew Marone, who, when his jaw got up off the ground, said, well, if the mayor wants it. So they went to clean it up, do the best they could. There was graffiti and stuff everywhere. They secured it enough. They wired some lights in, and we had a massive sellout dinner. And I knew we had something special when the week ahead of the dinner, I was at a baseball game at Comerica Park. I ran into Al Kaline, who I'd known for years, a long time Tiger great, and he came up and he said, hey, Mike, could you do me a favor? And I thought, I never in my life thought Al Kaline would be asking me for a favor. He was my hero growing up. I said, sure. He says, Cranes has this dinner at the train station, and the tickets are sold out. I can't get tickets. Can you help me? And I'm like, Al, I'm pretty sure we get you tickets, but why is it so important? He says, in 1959, as a 19-year-old kid, I left Baltimore for the first time. I was signed by the Tigers. I came into town on the train, and I came out in the Michigan Central train station, and I thought this was the most amazing building and the most amazing city I ever saw. It will always be my first impression of the city of Detroit. I haven't been in it in 40 years. And so, of course, we got tickets for Al Kaline, who we introduced as a special guest. Huge sellout crowd. Lily Tomlin spoke. It was a huge event, and the interesting thing was everybody in town inside said, you know what, this building could be restored. Now, a few months later, I got word that Bill Ford was thinking about building some kind of a center for innovation. He'd been a longtime friend, so I went out to Dearborn, I sat down with him, I said, you know, what are you doing? And we're close enough, he told me the story. And he told me a vision that I thought was breathtaking. He said, these cars are becoming computers on wheels, and we're in danger of losing the Silicon Valley. He says, with the resources the Ford Motor Company owns, we should own the automated vehicle market. We should own the electric vehicle market. We're getting beat by these startups. And the reason is that our structure of the floors at the Glass House in Dearborn are not the structure where these young folks who are making these changes, who work in small collaborative groups work. I need a whole new setting for the people to design the automated electrical vehicles of the system, and they need to be away from our central campus. He said, I'm looking at Silicon Valley. We get a lot of our talent out of the University of Michigan. I'm looking out in the Ann Arbor area. And that's kind of what we're doing. And so we talked for quite a while. I said, Bill, the students from Ann Arbor may be greatly talented, but when they graduated, they don't want to live in Ann Arbor anymore. They want to live in Detroit. They want to live where the teams are, where the theaters are, where the riverfront is, where the action is. If you want long-term talent, you should be thinking about the city. And he said, I'm going to have to give that some thought. About 3 months later, he called me back. And he said, okay, we're coming if you'll help me get a deal done. I'm like, great, I'll do whatever you want. I said, what do you want to do? He says, I want to buy the train station. And it was instantly, I couldn't say a word. It was so utterly brilliant. And Bill and I have a long history. Bill's family, when they came from Ireland, came here and landed in Corktown. My family, when they came from Ireland, came and landed in Corktown. Our grandfathers actually knew each other. My great-grandfather was a blacksmith on Michigan Avenue. His great-grandfather started automobiles, which is, of course, the reason for the divergence in our family fortunes all these years later. But Bill, it's like he's coming back home. And so Matthew Maroon was great. We worked out the deal. When Ford announced this, it exploded internationally. It helped their talent recruitment. And here's what they're doing. Not only are they bringing 2,500 Ford employees, they are also building adjacent buildings with another 2,500 employees from startups. Anybody who's doing any kind of software, electronics, chips, battery technology, they'll be able to locate right next door. And instead of Ford having to own all of them, the startups can land here and partner. And then, with the help of Pete Buttigieg, who's in town today, we now are building the most modern roads in America. Michigan Avenue is going to be wired to support electric cars and automated vehicles. We're already putting the inductive magnets, I'm not the expert on this, under 14th Street, but it will allow your car to charge as you drive, charge as you park on the street. And that's going in right now so that as these young people, you like that? As these startups develop these new technologies, they can try them right out on the streets. We are going to compete and beat Silicon Valley on the future of these automobiles. And then, now the question is what happens? And we've seen this all over America. When these kinds of activities come in, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's Austin, whether it's Brooklyn, you have gentrification. The people who have stayed here for years have been pushed out. And we have made a commitment that in Corktown that's not going to happen. If you haven't been there, you got to see it. It is amazing. The housing that is being built all through Corktown, the hotels, the high-rises, there are cranes all over the place. I remember when Tiger Stadium closed down and they said the neighborhood was going to be dead. That's the only way we could think about it, right? You're operating 80 dates a year, you're closed the other 280 dates a year, but the stadium leaves and your neighborhood is finished. In fact, the neighborhood has grown like it never has. So we went out and said, we're not going to have a neighborhood just for wealthy people. And we went and landed a federal choice grant, the most competitive grant you can get from HUD, $30 million. We're going to build 800 new units spread through Corktown, 500 of people with very low income. So people of all incomes will be living in that neighborhood as it comes back. These are the kinds of things that we're doing today. And as you go across the city, you'll see a lot of things have changed. Where St. Jean Street used to be, there is now a Jeep plant employing 4,000 people building the Grand Cherokee L's on the east side of Detroit. General Motors has now taken what you may have known as the Poletown plant. It's now Factory Zero, their first plant where they're building 100% electric cars. They're building the electric Hummers and Silverados and the self-driving cruises that are operating right now on the West Coast, but will be at the forefront of automated vehicles. Of course, what Ford is doing in Corktown is obvious, but there's a lot more. The abandoned Kettering High School is now the Dakota dashboard plant. 500 jobs making the dashboards for the Jeeps. The long-abandoned Cadillac stamping plant has been demolished, and a new Lear seating plant with 500 employees about to start making seats for the new GM cars are over at Gratiot and Connor. We are very shortly going to announce another plant at the old AMC headquarters site on Plymouth Road that's been vacant for decades that will help the west side of Detroit. And next week, we are going to start the demolition on the Packard plant that closed in 1958 and is finally going to be removed as an eyesore from the city so we can rebuild and create jobs on that site as well. And as you go from neighborhood to neighborhood, you can see the difference. We not only took down 25,000 houses, we had 10,000 houses that were vacant 8 years ago that we've renovated and families have moved into. Anybody here might want a house? We auction 3 every day. You can go on buildingdetroit.org if you want one. Auction opens at 9, closes at 5. And that has brought the neighborhoods back where the property values, if you haven't seen the story, for the first time this year, the average property value in the city went over $100,000. We have raised the property values from one end of the city to the other. And with the great recession in 2009, Detroit lost its proud history of being primarily a homeowner community. A majority of Detroiters were renting. The U.S. Census Bureau is releasing data today. And the data they're going to release today shows that we have reversed the trend, that the first time in many years, a majority of Detroiters are homeowners again because we're moving people back into these houses and having them buy. We are very proud of the direction we're going. And for those of you here, I would say this. When Mary Kramer invited folks here 9 years ago, she asked people to come back and invest as a source of charity. I'd say once you come around this city, we want you back. We want you to come back and invest as a source of pride so that you can be part of this recovery, part of this great national story. So thank you very much for being here, and I hope I get a chance to see you around the city.